Welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to be talking about the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck by Mark Manson.
Yeah, this one really kind of shakes things up in the self-help world, huh?
It does.
Instead of just the constant think positive and all that stuff, it's more about being choosy about what we actually care about.
Yeah, and it's like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have we heard we need to be happy all the time? This book just throws that out the window.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not even about being like negative or pessimistic or anything. It's
Right.
about accepting that life is messy, and that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dive into some of the big ideas then.
Hmm.
One of the things that I thought was really interesting was this whole idea of not giving a feck as like a path to success.
Right.
And Manson uses the example of Charles Bukowski, the writer,
Oh, yeah.
to kind of illustrate this point.
Yeah, what's so interesting about Bukowski is he was kind of an anti-role model in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a heavy drinker, gambler, definitely didn't fit the mold of a traditional successful person, right?
But he just embraced it all, you know?
Yeah.
He wrote honestly about his experiences, and it resonated with people.
It makes you think, doesn't it? Like, could trying too hard to be perfect actually be holding us back?
Yeah.
Maybe there's something to be said for just like authenticity, being comfortable with who we are.
Totally. And it all ties into this thing he calls the feedback loop from hell,
Yeah.
which I think is so relevant, especially today,
Mm-hmm.
with social media and everything.
Yeah.
We're constantly bombarded with these images of other people's seemingly perfect lives.
It's like everyone's on vacation all the time,
Right.
eating these beautifully plated meals and everything.
Exactly. And it's like,
And you're just like, come on.
yeah.
Like, really?
We start comparing ourselves and feeling inadequate.
Yes.
Like we're not doing enough, not being enough.
So not giving a feck in a way can help us break free from this cycle.
That's the idea.
But like, how do we actually stop giving a feck about all this stuff that doesn't even matter? Well, that's where Manson's philosophy comes in.
Yeah.
It's all about choosing your battles. You know what I mean? Focus your energy on the things that truly align with your values and let go of the rest.
It's like accepting we can't do everything, be everything to everyone.
Right.
And that's okay.
Exactly. It's about giving ourselves permission to not be perfect, to make mistakes,
Yeah,
and to prioritize what's important to us.
absolutely. And
Mhm.
speaking of motivation and finding your path, if you're looking for inspiring stories and tips on personal growth, be sure to check out Affirmify Journey on YouTube.
They have some great content.
Yeah, they do. So another thing that was really interesting in the book was this idea that happiness comes from solving problems, not avoiding them.
Yeah.
Wait, so you're telling me struggling is a good thing? That seems kind of counterintuitive to everything we've been told about happiness.
I know, right? But think about it this way.
Okay.
If life was just a constant stream of pleasure and ease, would it really be fulfilling?
I guess not.
Would it get kind of boring after a while?
Probably. Yeah. We kind of need challenges to grow, don't we?
Exactly. Manson uses this great analogy.
Yeah.
He compares life to constantly exchanging or upgrading our problems.
Right.
You solve one, and then a new one pops up. It's like this never-ending video game where you're always leveling up.
So instead of trying to avoid problems altogether,
Right.
we should be focusing on choosing the right problems to solve.
Yes.
The ones that will make our lives better.
The ones that align with those values.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so, and here's where it gets even more interesting. Manson says even negative emotions can be valuable.
Yeah.
I thought we were supposed to avoid negative emotions at all costs.
Not necessarily. He says that negative emotions can actually be like a signal, a call to action. They can alert us to problems that need to be addressed.
Huh. So instead of trying to ignore or suppress negative emotions,
Right.
we should actually listen to them,
Exactly.
figure out what they're telling us,
Yeah.
and then use that information to make changes.
That's the idea. Now, it's not about letting your emotions run wild. You still got to use logic and reason, but it's about acknowledging those emotions,
Okay, so this all makes sense, but how do we know which problems to choose?
Ah.
How do we know which struggles are actually worth our time and energy?
Well, that's where this concept of values comes in again.
Right.
Manson argues that our values are like our compass. They guide our decisions, and they help us determine what's truly important.
So if we're not clear on our values, we're basically just wandering around aimlessly,
Right.
taking on any problem that comes our way.
Yeah, you're just reacting to everything.
Without thinking about if it actually matters to us.
Exactly. And that's why he spends a lot of time in this book helping us figure out our values and making sure they're the right ones for us.
Yeah, this idea of values is really sticking with me here.
Yeah.
It's making me think about how important it is to be clear about what we value,
Mm,
and then making sure our actions actually reflect that.
absolutely. Now, this all leads into another big concept in the book, the danger of entitlement. And he uses this character named Jimmy, who is just this delusional startup founder, to illustrate how an inflated ego can really mess things up.
Oh yeah, Jimmy. He's quite the character.
Yeah.
Always blaming everyone else for his failures, never taking any responsibility for his own actions.
Yeah, that's the essence of entitlement right there.
Right.
It's that belief that you're special without actually putting in the work.
Without having earned it.
Yeah. And Manson argues that this can be really damaging,
Makes sense.
both to ourselves and our relationships.
Right, because if we always think we're right and everyone else is wrong, we're never going to learn or grow.
Exactly.
It just shuts down any possibility for improvement.
Right. And he points out that this whole entitlement problem is even worse in our digital age,
Oh, for sure.
where everyone is presenting the highlight reel of their lives.
It's easy to get caught up in that comparison game,
Yeah.
thinking everyone's living these amazing, successful lives
Right.
while we're stuck in a rut.
He calls it the tyranny of
It's
exceptionalism.
the tyranny of exceptionalism.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're just bombarded with images of all these extraordinary people doing these extraordinary things.
And it makes us feel like we're not measuring up.
Right, which then leads to feelings of inadequacy, resentment, even a sense of victimhood.
Yeah, you start thinking the world is against you.
Yeah.
You're being held back
When really it might be our own mindset holding us back.
instead of just taking responsibility
Exactly.
for our own lives.
And that victim mentality can be really dangerous
Right.
because it keeps you stuck in a cycle of blame and negativity.
Yeah, you're not focused on solutions.
Right, you're not taking any action.
You're just complaining.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do we combat this?
Yeah. How do we shift that perspective?
Well, Manson argues that it all starts with choosing the right values.
Okay.
Values that are based on reality,
Mm-hmm.
on growth, on contribution,
Okay.
rather than just superficial measures of success.
Okay, so instead of focusing on being special or exceptional,
Right.
maybe we should focus on being authentic, contributing to something bigger than ourselves,
Yeah.
making a positive impact.
Now, to illustrate this point, he shares this really interesting story about Hiru Onoda,
Okay.
who was a Japanese soldier who continued fighting World War II for 30 years after it ended.
Wait, 30 years.
Yeah.
He must have been incredibly dedicated.
And he was dedicated.
Wow.
The problem was the war was over.
Oh.
He just refused to believe it.
Oh, wow.
He stayed hidden in the jungle, clinging to his outdated beliefs for decades.
That's a pretty extreme example,
It is.
but it shows how powerful our beliefs can be.
Right. Even when they're not based in reality, they can have a huge impact on our choices and our lives.
And this leads us to the heart of Manson's argument.
Yeah.
Choosing the right values,
Mm-hmm.
because they are the foundation
They are.
for everything else in our lives.
Right.
So that if we're basing our decisions on values that are flawed
Mm-hmm.
or unhealthy,
Mm-hmm.
then everything else is going to be out of whack.
It's all going to be off.
Our thoughts, our emotions,
Yeah.
our actions.
It's all going to be misaligned.
So the challenge then is figuring out what our true values are.
Right.
And Manson suggests asking ourselves, why?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I doing this? Why do I believe this?
It's about digging deeper,
Yeah.
uncovering the motivations behind our choices.
Okay, so like if we're unhappy in our jobs,
Yeah.
instead of just blaming our boss or our coworkers,
Yeah.
we should ask ourselves, why are we unhappy?
Exactly.
What are the values or beliefs that are contributing to that feeling?
Right. Maybe you value creativity, but your job is stifling that.
Yeah.
Or maybe you really prioritize work-life balance, but your current role demands constant overtime.
And so you're feeling burnt out
Yeah.
because your actions aren't aligned with your values.
Right. And by digging deeper, you can start to see if your unhappiness stems from a mismatch between your values and your actual circumstances.
Yeah, I think a lot of us just go through life without really thinking about our values.
Yeah.
We just do what's expected of us
We go with the flow.
without really stopping to think about what matters.
Yeah. Right. And Manson's book really pushes us to do that introspection.
Yeah.
To question our assumptions and to make sure that we're living a life that's aligned with what we truly hold dear.
This has been really eye-opening, I gotta say.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much we've covered already.
I know.
And we haven't even scratched the surface.
There's so much more to explore.
I know. I can't wait to dive deeper.
We haven't even touched on responsibility, genetics, saying no, dealing with death.
All the good stuff.
But we'll get to all of that.
I'm ready when you are. This is really making me think.
That's what we're hoping for.
Yeah, about my own life and my choices.
To get you reflecting on these ideas.
They're definitely succeeding.
And how they connect to your own experiences.
Yeah, I'm feeling a shift in perspective already.
I love it.
So I'm excited to see where this journey takes me.
Me too. It's always fascinating to see how these ideas resonate with different people and how they apply them to their own unique situations.
Yeah, absolutely.
And their own challenges.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah.
All right, so let's keep going.
Let's do it. Okay, so we've talked about values, but how do they tie into this idea of responsibility? Manson argues that taking responsibility for our lives is like crucial for happiness, but it doesn't mean blaming ourselves for everything that goes wrong.
Okay, good. Because I think a lot of people hear responsibility and they think, oh, so it's my fault.
Right, exactly. And that's where this whole responsibility fault fallacy comes in.
Okay.
He makes a clear distinction between those two things.
Okay.
Taking responsibility means acknowledging that we have the power to choose how we respond to situations, regardless of who's to blame.
Okay, so can you give me an example? Because I'm trying to wrap my head around this.
Sure. So let's say you get laid off from your job.
Okay.
It's really easy to fall into that blame game, right?
Yeah, point the finger.
Yeah, your boss, the company, whatever.
Yeah.
But taking responsibility would mean asking yourself, okay, what can I learn from this situation? And what steps can I take to move forward?
So instead of dwelling on what's unfair,
Yeah.
I shift my focus to what I can control.
Exactly.
My attitude, my actions.
Your next steps.
That's a really empowering way to look at it.
It is. And he uses the story of William James to illustrate this point.
Who is William James?
He's considered the father of American psychology.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
he was really struggling early in his life with all sorts of things. Health issues, depression. And so he decided to conduct this experiment where he chose to believe that he was 100% responsible for everything in his life for a year.
Wow, that's a bold experiment.
It is a bold experiment, so what happened?
Yeah, did it work?
Well, it's considered a major turning point in his life.
Oh, wow.
This shift in perspective, this willingness to own his choices and his actions, ultimately led to his success and his personal fulfillment.
So he literally changed his life by changing his mindset about responsibility.
Exactly. It's amazing how powerful our beliefs can be, right? If we believe that we're powerless, we'll act accordingly. But if we believe we have the power to change our circumstances, we're more likely to take action.
And actually create change.
Yeah, but of course there are times when bad things happen that are truly outside of our control.
Like accidents or illnesses.
Exactly. But even then, Manson argues we still have a choice
Okay.
in how we respond to those events.
So even when we're dealing with really difficult circumstances, we can choose to focus on what we can control.
Right.
Our attitude, our outlook, our actions.
And he even uses a personal anecdote in the book about his first girlfriend cheating on him.
Ooh.
And he talks about the pain and the betrayal that he felt, but he also recognized that he had the power to choose how he responded to that experience.
Okay, so instead of letting the anger and resentment consume him,
Yeah.
he chose to learn from it and grow.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that even in the face of adversity, we have a choice in how we let it shape us.
I like that. Okay, so then this leads to another interesting discussion in the book, the role of genetics
Yes.
and the hand that we're dealt in life.
Right.
So is Manson saying it's not all about nature versus nurture?
It's not just one or the other.
Okay, there's a bit of both at play.
Exactly. And he uses this case study of teenagers with OCD
Yep.
to demonstrate this point. These individuals obviously face some significant challenges because of their condition,
Right.
but they can still learn to manage their symptoms and live fulfilling lives by choosing empowering values and taking proactive steps.
So it's not about denying the reality of our genetics or our circumstances. It's about recognizing that we still have agency.
Exactly. We still have the power to make choices that influence our lives.
Okay, so this kind of ties into something else he talks about. Victimhood chic.
Yeah.
What is that?
So he argues that in today's media environment, there's this tendency to amplify outrage and a sense of moral superiority.
Right, it's like everyone's competing to be the most offended.
Exactly. And that can distract from the actual problems
Yeah.
and prevent us from actually having constructive conversations.
So it's not about denying that bad things happen
Yep.
or that people experience suffering.
It's about choosing to focus on solutions.
Okay.
Taking action.
Yeah.
Creating positive change rather than just getting stuck in this cycle of blame and outrage.
Okay, so all this talk about responsibility and choosing our struggles makes it sound like we should never say no to anything.
I know, right?
Like we should just keep pushing ourselves to the limit.
But that's why he dedicates a whole chapter to the importance of saying no.
Okay.
He argues that setting boundaries and being selective about what we allow into our lives is actually crucial for our well-being.
So it's not about saying yes to everything and everyone. It's
No.
about being discerning,
Yeah, being choosy.
choosing what aligns with our values, and
Exactly.
saying no to the things that don't.
And he uses this personal anecdote about his nomadic lifestyle
Okay.
and how it was initially driven by both healthy and unhealthy values.
Okay.
He loved traveling and experiencing new cultures,
Sure.
but he also realized that some of his motivations stemmed from a fear of commitment,
Oh, interesting.
which was like a residual effect of some of the traumatic experiences he had when he was younger.
So our past experiences can really shape our values
They can.
in ways we don't even realize.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, and so he eventually realized that he needed to learn to say no,
Right.
both to protect himself,
Yeah.
but also to create space for things that truly matter.
To prioritize.
Yeah, and it's about recognizing that our time and energy are precious.
Limited resources.
Yes, we need to be mindful.
About how we spend them.
Yeah, and what's interesting is he connects this idea of saying no to his experiences in Russia,
Yes.
where he encountered a culture that values blunt honesty.
Over polite niceties.
So instead of beating around the bush, Russians just tell it like it is.
Yeah, they just tell you straight up.
Interesting.
He found it jarring at first,
I bet.
but ultimately it fostered a greater sense of trust and authenticity.
Huh?
And it made him question whether our emphasis in the West on avoiding conflict and being polite all the time might actually hinder our ability to build real connections.
It's fascinating how different cultures have such different norms around communication.
It is, and he brings this back to the importance of boundaries in relationships.
Okay.
He argues that healthy relationships require both partners to take responsibility for their own problems
Okay.
and to be willing to say no.
So it's not about trying to fix your partner
Right.
or being everything to them.
Exactly. It's about recognizing we're separate individuals with our own needs and boundaries.
And then he also discusses cheating.
Yes, a tough topic.
Yeah, and how it undermines trust.
Which is the foundation of any relationship.
Right.
And he emphasizes that cheating is not just a random act.
Right.
It's a symptom of misaligned values and a lack of personal responsibility.
Okay, so if you find yourself in a situation where you or your partner are tempted to cheat, it's important to examine the underlying issues.
Have those tough conversations.
Yeah. Are you truly committed to this relationship?
Exactly.
What are your values?
What are your expectations?
Yeah. And this leads us to a pretty heavy chapter in the book,
It is a heavy one.
where Manson reflects on the death of his friend Josh,
Yeah.
which obviously had a profound impact on his life.
This chapter is called And Then You Die. And it's a stark reminder that our time is limited.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and forget about that.
Exactly.
That bigger picture.
Right.
The fact that we're not here forever.
And Manson doesn't shy away from the difficult emotions.
No.
But he also emphasizes that embracing this reality can help us to live more meaningfully.
So it's not about living in fear of death,
Wow.
but using it as motivation.
To prioritize.
Yeah, to really live a life true to ourselves.
He actually shares a dream that he had about Josh after his death,
Oh, wow.
where Josh essentially tells him there's nothing to be afraid of. And it was a message that really resonated with Manson
Yeah.
and helped him overcome his fears.
It's a beautiful reminder that even in death, there can be lessons in comfort.
And that ultimately what matters most is how we choose to live.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a question we should probably ask ourselves pretty regularly,
Yeah.
because if we're not careful, we can waste a lot of time and energy on things that don't really matter.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that leads us to another key concept, the importance of failure.
Okay.
I know it sounds counterintuitive.
Yeah.
We're always taught to avoid failure at all costs, but Manson actually argues that failure is essential for growth and success.
Okay, how can failure be a good thing?
Yeah.
Help me understand this, because it always feels pretty terrible in the moment.
Well, think about it. Every time we fail, we learn something.
Okay.
We gain experience. We figure out what doesn't work.
Okay.
And that helps us try something different next time.
So instead of seeing it as a weakness,
Right.
it's an opportunity for growth.
Exactly. And he points out that most of us are so afraid of failing that we don't even take risks.
Right. We play it safe.
We stay in our comfort zones.
Yeah.
But that fear can actually paralyze us and prevent us from reaching our full potential.
He even tells a story about Pablo Picasso
Oh, yeah.
being approached by a woman in a cafe who wanted to buy a napkin he'd been noodling on.
Yes.
And Picasso's like, yeah, sure, I'll sell it to you, but it's going to be like $20,000.
Uh-huh.
And the woman's like, What? It only took you a few minutes to draw that.
Exactly.
And Picasso says, no, ma'am. It took me over 60 years to draw this.
It's such a good story.
Isn't it? It really highlights that value of experience.
Of all those failures
All those years of trial and error.
that contributed to his mastery.
So if we want to be truly successful, we have to embrace failure as part of the process.
The more we fail, the more we learn.
And this brings us to another point. Action.
Yes, the do something principle.
Okay, the do something
Yeah,
principle.
it's this idea that we can't just sit around and think about our goals.
You have to take action.
We have to actually do something.
So it's not enough to dream big.
No.
You got to put in the work.
You have to get up and do the work.
He says action often precedes motivation.
It does.
So we don't necessarily have to wait to feel motivated.
Right. Sometimes you just need to start doing it.
Okay, so even if we're not feeling it, we just got to get the ball rolling.
Exactly, because when we take action, even a small step, it creates momentum. It gives us that feeling of accomplishment.
And that can inspire us to keep going.
That's right.
I like that. I got to put that into practice because I'm so guilty of waiting for that perfect moment or feeling.
I think we all are.
But maybe I just need to trust that the motivation will come.
Just dive in.
Yeah, just dive in.
Yeah.
So overall, I think that's a big takeaway from this book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck. It's about taking ownership of our lives, choosing our struggles wisely, and focusing on what truly matters.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the subtle art of not giving a feck, I want to thank you for joining me on this journey.
It's been a pleasure.
I've really enjoyed this conversation. It's been so insightful and thought-provoking.
I agree. I always enjoy these conversations.
Me too, especially when we can explore ideas that challenge our assumptions
Yes.
and encourage us to live more fulfilling lives.
That's what it's all about.
And if you're interested in learning more about personal development or just expanding your knowledge in general, be sure to check out lingopediamagazine.com.
They have a ton of great resources.
They have courses, ebooks, all sorts of stuff.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and share it with your friends.
We release new episodes every week, so hit that notification bell to stay updated. And don't forget to give us a like if you found this episode helpful.
Thanks for listening.